We hope you found value in part 1 of this podcast. Thank you for joining us for this second segment.
Hello and welcome to the Communication Solution Podcast with Casey Jackson and John Gilbert. I'm your host, Danielle Cantin. Here at the Institute for Individual and Organizational Change, otherwise known as IFIOC, we love to talk about communication, we love to talk about solutions, and we love to talk about providing measurable results for individuals, organizations, and the communities they serve. Welcome to the communication solution that will change your world.
And when you say that, Mary, the thing that we're in the middle of this, but I can right now, just on that, between you and I right now, now it's making my brain, I think because when you were talking about when you've watched The Officers and those videos that I have, they're just profoundly short. I mean, these interactions that are 8.5 minutes long and life-changing, truly life-changing, suicide prevention, just things that change people's lives. And when I developed the motivational interviewing competency assessment, that MICA, to measure conversations, when you submitted the first recording of chambers that was okay for you to submit to me to review, the tool that I used at the time required a 20-minute sample size of an MI-based conversation. Part of the reason I developed the MICA instead was so many doctors and nurses I worked with, their conversations are 5 to 15 minutes long. They don't even get to, so it's like, how do we use this in a way that's truly looking at fidelity and not just good communication? Good communication is important. It's great. Good communication is great communication. Yay. But where does evidence show that we're going to impact behavior change? And that's why when I was working on the MICA to think about how can we measure this and give feedback, now my obsession with you is now I want to sit in the community court and watch these 3-minute conversations and just analyze those and go, okay, how do you maximize time? How do you maximize time? How do you maximize time? Now if the judge has maybe 4 minutes of quality time, other than the 3 minutes of doing the required reading, how do you maximize that 4 minutes? And I don't know if it's possible, but I think this is where I get excited about innovation, because people didn't believe that this could happen with law enforcement when I started working with law enforcement. Officers did not believe it could happen when I first showed up. They were first in line to say this won't work as I'm standing in front of them in trainings. And now that they see it working, I see this now on the judicial side, that it's like, wow, if we can maximize 3 to 4 minutes, and the more that I'm studying on brain science, like the precision, if your brain, Mary Logan's brain, is so precise around law and application of law, at this stage in time, wouldn't it be fun to come to that level of precision of being able to understand language and have both of those skill sets to be able to master? Like, to me, that truly is the next frontier potentially in restorative justice, is like, how do we think from that perspective and use every time I open my mouth, I can see the impact it's having on the brain. And I'm not even the therapist. I'm sitting on the bench and thinking about how can I help this person reintegrate into their community, which reduces crime. And I don't see these people again because they're moving on with their lives. I mean, that to me is, wow. I mean, fairy tale, but fairy tale in a good way. It's like, oh my gosh, let's read that book and see where it goes. Like I want to go sit in. I really do. I think if it's appropriate, if I can sit in on some of those situations, my brain is just
open court. We're an open court. But what you just said also, as I'm thinking about in community court, because I have the luxury of time in community court, and I was just, as you were saying those things, I'm like, and I waste it. I have to do it, and it's a part of our. I mean, what I'm thinking about here is, I sit face to face with our participants in community court. So they've just by fundamentals, they are referred in, they come to the downtown library, they are met by the attorneys, the strength of the case is measured. Can it go to trial? Do they want to go to trial instead? Because our court's an opt-in, you don't have to. But if they opt in, then they immediately get evaluation to see what their needs are. And then they craft up what's known as a stipulated order of continuance, with the conditions being get your identification, have maybe a SUD evaluation, follow through with treatment, and then, sign up for housing and, all of the details of their lives that are lacking that they need the support for. then become the conditions they have to meet in order to have the case dismissed, along as well as, don't pick up new charges. And that's all discussed with them by their attorney, and then they come to me, and I go through that. So it's this, I'm having an epiphany right in front of you. my first moments with them, other than I always greet them, "How are you doing today, sir?" Or it's very open, free flow conversation to a point. I have to, put some stops up to begin with, or at some points, but then when it comes down to we're going on the record and they're entering the deal, I spend all of that time going through that contract with them. So you're going to be with us for the next 3 months. And then I go through the details of it and reiterate the same thing that they've already heard. And then that's it. That's it. I try to imbue more into it. But at that point, again, I'm at the very end of all of that process, and they have been handled now for anywhere from probably at the very least 20 to 30 minutes, and probably upwards more of 30 to 40 minutes. So coming into the court and, having their stuff set aside, and then talking to the attorney, and then talking to our probation officer and having that evaluation, and then striking the deal, and then coming to me. So they're like, I want to go. They're done with the super gritty stuff that's there. And while I try to talk to them in that process, and there's times where there are revelations that are made about the agreement where I'll bring in the attorney, because it's like, this doesn't seem to make sense in terms of where we're at. So they see me not advocating for them, but listening to them and then addressing those kinds of issues. But I want to create more different time than that with them. And so now I'm going to work on that, because it is one of those opportunities. The only pressure is they want to get out of there because they're tired, right? And we feed them lunch, and they're always hungry. I try to feed them along the way so that blood sugar is maintained. And, if they're coming off of some whatever bad drug night or alcohol night or whatever the night before, that they can get at least something in them to try to stabilize, physically stabilize them. And those that's not so anxious just to, can I get my lunch now? Can I stop talking about these things? Because it's a big, huge load of stuff that lands in their lap. Here's all the stuff to fix your life. And so, I try to back it back down again and say, okay, so let's talk about what's the one thing you're going to work on. I have to enforce the community service component. So, I give them options about that. But right, it's all very technical. It's not, okay, you're living on the street, which I acknowledge with them. You're living on the street, and I'm asking you to come either to one of the shelters to do community service, or, trying to figure out how to change that so that they can see that behavior reintegrates them into society. I mean, that's the reason why we have community service as a component, is they are disenfranchised. They are like aliens in our city. And I don't want them to feel like aliens, because if they have ownership of our city, I'm hopeful that change in their mindset, right, would change in their behavior as they interact with the city. So that, I do have to talk to them about why I have to front load that, and, we can kind of get into the details. But such valuable time as they sit there. We are eyeball to eyeball. I don't sit up on a dais. I'm not up above anybody. It's just us all at the same level. And they're, 2 feet away from me, probably closer to a judge than they have ever been, under circumstances that are super relaxed. It's not like we're surrounded by guards or anything, as we're not.
Right.
So very frank and open possibilities. And there have been times where I have stepped into where I would feel like maybe I had used it a little bit more successfully, but I have to figure out that first contact with them that is so formal, because it's just like court, and we designed it not to be just like court, and yet there we are. I'm doing the exact same thing as if I were up where I'm normally in my regular courtroom. The very thing I'm trying to avoid.
Mary, I mean, this is a little far out there, but I think conceptually for me, what's clicking with me is there's an organization, Center for Employment Opportunities. It's a national nonprofit that, not in Washington State, but in lots of major cities, that they specifically help recently incarcerated individuals get into employment. They literally give them paychecks every day. They get cards and they
Wow.
get paid every day. So, because that's part of the problem, is they can't even wait for their first paycheck for most of the individuals once they've been released. Phenomenal, very progressive program. But what struck me about that was that they were so excited when I went down into Oakland, the office in Oakland. They were like, I was going down to another training with them, and they were so excited. Okay, see, you can't wait to see this. We got this for you. And I show up there, and what they had done is, in the lobby where they do the intake, they had painted Focus Mountain on
Oh,
the wall from floor to ceiling. And that's where
wow.
they sit. And that's where they sit and do the intake and show them the different things, the trees they have to go through. But all they focus on the whole time is, we're voluntary, and do you want to get to the top of the mountain? It
Nice.
was literally, and they painted obviously black and silver for the Oakland Raiders, but the entire mountain is this literally floor to ceiling, probably 10 to 12 feet wide, going up to the ceiling. And they kind of walk as they're sitting there doing their initial intake with them. They're walking them through the process and pointing out. And they said, our whole focus is to get you to the top of your mountain as you define it. Um,
Wow.
so
Okay,
that
so I want that as my backdrop,
that's
right? That's
exactly
what I
what I
think
was
you're
thinking.
thinking.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, oh my gosh. And if that's where you started conversations, because they're going to go, what the hell is that behind her?
Yes.
And to go, you know what? I am just one of the trees here. Instead of, I think that pulls you, off the bench and straight into the conversation and going, these trees are not going anywhere. These boulders that have dropped in your life, that, partially you've pushed in your life, aren't going anywhere. But we can help you get to the top of the mountain if you so choose. So if you think this is a dance to reduce a sentence or to move into something else, many people use it that way. But the reason why I'm here is to help you get to the top of the mountain. And I don't want you to think that I'm just one of these trees. This whole process is to help you. But I know most of you sitting in front of me genuinely just think this is a way to get something else off your record, or to, I that's where your mindset, which is normal, because who wants to be in this process? But if
Right.
you truly want to get to the top of the mountain, those are the conversations that I want to have with you every time that we meet.
Cool. Yes. So I remember the first time that I went through the training with you, I'm like, I need to blow up that tree. I want to, put it in my courtroom. And then I didn't do it. But I tell you what, I'm going to get a hold of Sarah, who was also a part of the training
Yes.
this last time with you. And we have a little bit of funding now, and maybe it can be used for that. If not, I'm going to do it on my own. What we do have as the backdrop, which is probably too subtle of messaging to be really absorbed by the individuals, because so broken when they're sitting in front of me. They are
Yes.
fresh, hot, cold off the street. But I have graduation trees, and each of our participants is a leaf on that tree. And so when they graduate from community court, then they get to place themselves on these trees. So we have the backdrop for me as the 3 trees that we have right now, filled with the names of those folks that had graduated. So again, the idea of being visualizing themselves as a part of that tree. But I think it's too subtle. I don't think that, while they get it at graduation time, I'm not sure in the middle of it where, they just took their last fentanyl hit 5 hours before they came into court, that
Yes.
they're looking at that going, oh, yes, I want to be one of those.
Oh my God, Mary. Okay. I'm such a visual person. Here's my thought. What you do is you have that graduation tree as the only tree at the top of the mountain with all the values. And then you have leaves all along the path of people that haven't made it lower down.
Whoa.
Not the names, but just leaves without names. And then the one at the top of the mountain, there's just one tree. Your tree is at the top of the mountain, and that's where the leaves go. And just have leaves scattered around the rest of the mountain, and only name the trees on Focus Mountain with the things that are part of the court process, with treatment, classes they have to go to, community service. Just
Housing.
have those the trees, and just
Yeah.
say we have to navigate these trees. But here's the people that have made it to the top of the mountain. And I think that, and what I would do is, if I was in your position, I would just say, what are 2 or 3 things, your best case scenario? What are 2 or 3 of the values at the top of the mountain that you think best describe who you are and how you want to operate? Because that's how I'm going to see you, and those are the things that I'm going to hold you accountable for as your judge.
Mm.
Is your behavior in alignment with these things?
So here's another a reversed opportunity that I'm going to now switch. because as a part of the graduation process, I stole the idea from when you make your way through the coins, right? As you're making
Yes.
progress, you get a coin, right? So
Yes.
for graduates, I use, because I get to know them fairly well, or a little bit at any rate, I have rocks that have words inscribed like courage or strength or faith or things like that. And I try to pick a word that kind of matched their progress so that when they leave court, that rock goes in their pocket. And it's something I say, and I fill that rock with that saying, which is, this is how I have seen you, and this is the strengths that you've demonstrated. And if you have, I said everybody wavers when they get out, but if you have, I want you to look at that and understand that you successfully navigated this. And it was because of this one particular strength here, or that was one of the many, so that they can always have, a little bit of us with them as they make their way. People love those. They tell me all the time, but I think it's a lost opportunity for them to be invested in that from the
Yes.
get-go, right? To
Yes.
create their own courage, their own strength along the way. So I love that. Okay, I should be writing notes.
And I'll tell you the other thing, Mary, I'll add one more little twist to that is I think it would be phenomenal if you did two rocks. I think if they identify the top of their mountain and that's one of their rocks, and there's this, whatever the quality you saw in them is the second rock. So there's the one rock that they focused on the entire time for the top of their mountain word. And then the one that you saw in them is kind of the backup support from, as an outside observer, what you witnessed and you'd like them to hold on to for the you witnessed for them. I think that would be one rock for each pocket. I, I
One
just
for each
think
hand.
exactly one for each hand. I just think that, and I think with you working from that focus mountain perspective and having them define that, and just saying you're tired, you're exhausted, you needed food. I would literally even put lunch as one of the trees. Um, of just saying, there's all these things. Have the attorney, the public defender here, just all those. I would put every part of your process as one of the trees, everyone, and then I would just have them and the exact same words that I have on the top of the mountain, and just have them pick one word and say, "This is the thing. As the judge, I'm going to hold you accountable to. Are you really operating from a place where you genuinely want your freedom back, or your
Yeah,
independence, or do you operate from integrity?" And that's what I'm going to judge you on. Is if your behavior is aligning with that.
that's wonderful. Thank you. What a gift.
Whoa, this is perfect. This is where I get a little giddy. I get a little goofy in these situations because I'm like, oh my gosh, this actually makes change in the world. This is exactly what you and I were talking about. Like, why I got in the field as a social worker is why, you went the path you did. It's just it to this one person. If it matters, my day is I can't believe I got a paycheck for helping one person today. Like, that is
Yeah,
mind boggling.
feel very
So
lucky. I'm very fortunate. Yep.
awesome. Well, you and I are going to have ongoing conversations, obviously. We'll have to be shooting little emails back and forth to go, okay, would this work? But I think with open court, I want to learn more about that. And I really do want to start to get my brain to think that next frontier of innovation in the judiciary of, like, how can I help people understand, how do you maximize 3 to 5 minutes after you've had to do the script of what you have to say for record? Is there a way to maximize that? Are there specific ways to ask open-ended questions? Do you get truncated answers that aren't closed-ended questions? And then how do you master finding change talk in 3 to 5 minutes? Like that, almost like on steroids. Like, am I on steroids for a 3 to 5 minute conversation? I
Yeah.
want to start to observe it and learn culturally and contextually how the court system works that way, and how in these situations you could take this to a whole different level that hasn't been applied yet.
So I was, of course, in my ever-ending quest to try to improve this, I went online and I just typed in motivational interviewing for judges, and there's a social worker, MSW, I think he is, Michael Clark, who
Yeah.
actually created 13 questions or openings or something like that when you are, on the bench, which I spread far and wide through the District and Municipal Court Judges Association in an effort. He actually came and spoke. I had asked for you, but they went with him. Just to let you know that. And so I have handed out that just as, at least it's something for other judges, just even if they don't go through any training, if they just could see, how those questions are really about behavior change. Like one of them, felt like it was a little bit confrontational, but just asking somebody that's, made some changes, like, how in the world did you do this when you had that, in essence, that monkey on your back? And like, it sounded like a little bit chastising, but people were very responsive when, for example, I
Yes.
had asked that question to them, because it let them know that I saw how hard it is, right? When you're
Yes.
struggling with addiction, and it really is, it's not a monkey. It's like a 50 zillion pound weight that alters your entire world's perspective. But when you see that glimmer, right? When you start to see that radiation come
Yes.
from, like, acknowledging that work that comes along with it. And so that has been very helpful, but it just, again, it never feels like it's enough. This
I
isn't
agree.
enough.
Thank you so much for doing this. I am just like, I'm very appreciative. We may
Me
have to do
too.
this again to see how things go. So for you to carve out time and to be so open and transparent about it has just been, I just extremely appreciative.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It is. I've always tell everybody, anytime I can talk about these things, just give me a mic, because I think it's important. And I would hope that more judges would participate in motivational interviewing training, as well as the attorneys, right? Just system wide, that even if it's, who knows how they would use it or how they would incorporate it, it's the exposure to it, to understand there's a different way of communicating than just the rote, whatever, in essence, credit for time served and close, and feel like you've, done your job, because we've only just begun. Thank you.
And I think absolutely. And I think this is where I think, not that we'll have a road show, but I think that if you and I push this a little bit and look at it through a fidelity application model, and see if you feel any different, even any outcomes change because of that, I think that'd be just wonderful to share, besides just sheets of paper, that we can actually give them some structural, like, how do we do this better? How do we go to the next level? How do we write the next chapter of the fairy tale book?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Down the yellow brick road we'll go.
Yep, thank you so much. All right, we'll call it good for today.
Thank you.
Thanks for showing up, and hopefully we'll chat again soon. Thanks,
Yes.
Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Communication Solution Podcast with Casey Jackson and John Gilbert. As always, this podcast is about empowering you on your journey to change the world. So if you have questions, suggestions, or ideas, send them our way at casey@ifioc.com. That's CASEY@ifioc.com. For more information or to schedule a training, visit ifioc.com. Until our next Communication Solution Podcast, keep changing the world.